Ryan Christopher, the last time I saw you, it was Christmas. We were in number 10 at a party, but not that party. So happy Easter.
Happy Easter. What a beautiful day.
It's lovely, isn't it? So ADF, your company, support people in their fundamental freedoms in this country. And I want to talk about some of your successes because this is such a joyous occasion today and we're celebrating rather than talking about what we're trying to fight. And I think you fought against one of the greatest evils in modern day, the closure of churches, and you won. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, specifically a very brave clergyman and lots of evangelical pastors won against the Scottish government in court. It was the first legal win against lockdowns. And it was because there was a blanket ban and criminalisation of clergymen or pastors opening their church doors at all. And we have to remember, at the time the Scottish government did this, you're allowed to open bike shops and various other essential services, but places of worship were deemed not as essential as those. And at the same time, in England and Wales, churches were allowed to be open. So the question was, can the state or can a government like the Scottish government, without enough evidence, really blanket criminalise essential worship? And at the heart of this was the Scottish government saying, it's not essential that you gather together to worship. And the pastors and Canon Tom, who's at the heart of the case, was saying, actually, there is no proper worship without being in person. It's not your place to dictate that to the church.
Because the Christian faith is a faith of church. You cannot be a Christian by yourself.
Yes.
But also, it's a sacramental faith. So we need the elements. We need to receive communion. But it goes against the human right of freedom of worship, doesn't it, fundamentally?
Yes, absolutely. Article 9 is a right that Article 9, freedom of worship under the European Convention, is a positive right, as in it's written in law and it's protected under the Human Rights Act too. But more fundamentally, Calvin, it's just something that's a God-given natural right and duty for us as Christians. And these are assumptions that our state is built on, not that the state should be granting permission to do.
So I recognize the judge said this was an extraordinary abuse of the state's power. Does that mean that the state cannot do this kind of thing again?
In terms of binding precedent, then this decision really matters for the future. So if we were to have a lockdown in a few months' time, this precedent will be considered by courts if a government were to do something similar. Politically, I think the lack of evidence the Scottish government had will be taken into account when any government tries to do a lockdown in the future that affects churches.
That was going to bring my next question. This was obviously a Scottish case. Would it be relevant in the rest of the United Kingdom?
It would. Yeah, it would have a binding precedent that's relevant, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for all the work you put into this, fighting against this evil, and a success all round for Christians in Scotland.
Hallelujah.